The Greeks of Egypt, or Egyptians, have had a thriving presence in the country from the Hellenistic period until the aftermath of the Egyptian Revolution of 1952, when most were forced to leave. Indeed, the special and unique relationship of these two ancient civilizations dates back thousands of years and continues to some capacity to this day. The cultural and academic contributions of Egyptian and Greek civilizations to each other are well documented and agreed upon by historians, academics and scholars. Antiquity. Egyptian civilization is one of the earliest cultures, dating back to at least 3150 BC, and eventually Greeks made their way to living in Egypt since the 7th century BC. Herodotus visited Egypt in the 5th century BC and claimed that the Greeks were one of the first groups of foreigners that ever lived in Egypt. Diodorus Siculus claimed that Rhodionactus, one of the Heliadae, built the city of Heliopolis before the Cataclysm. Likewise, the Athenians built Sais, while all Greek cities were destroyed during the Cataclysm, possibly referring to the memory of the events of the much older Minoan eruption. The Egyptian cities, including Heliopolis and Sais, survived. First historical colonies. According to Herodotus, King Psammetichus I established a garrison of foreign mercenaries at Daphne, mostly Carians and Ionian Greeks. In 7th century BC, after the Greek Dark Ages, from 1100 to 750 BC, the city of Naucratis was founded in ancient Egypt. It was located on the Canopic branch of the Nile River, 45 miles from the open sea. It was the first and, for much of its early history, the only permanent Greek colony in Egypt, acting as a symbiotic nexus for the interchange of Greek and Egyptian art and culture. At about the same time, the city of Heracleion, the closest to the sea, became an important port for Greek trade. It had a famous temple of Heracles. The city later sank into the sea, only to be rediscovered recently. From the time of Psammetichus I onwards, Greek mercenary armies played an important role in some of the Egyptian wars. One of such armies was led by Mentor of Rhodes. Another such personage was Phans of Halicarnassus. Hellenistic times. Rule of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great conquered Egypt at an early stage of his great journey of conquests. He respected the pharaonic religions and customs, and he was declared by the priest pharaoh of Egypt. He established the city of Alexandria. After his death, in 323 BC, his enormous empire was divided among his generals. Egypt was given to Ptolemy I Soter, whose descendants would give Egypt her final royal dynasty, a glittering one, albeit largely Greek in flavor. Its capital was the city of Alexandria. Ptolemy added legitimacy to his rule in Egypt by acquiring Alexander's body. He intercepted the embalmed corpse on its way to burial, brought it to Egypt and placed it in a golden coffin in Alexandria. It would remain one of the famous sights of the town for many years, until probably destroyed in riots in the 3rd century AD. The Ptolemaic dynasty. The initial objective of Ptolemy's reign was to establish firm and broad boundaries to his newly acquired kingdom. That led to almost continuous warfare against other leading members of Alexander's circle. At times he held Cyprus and even parts of mainland Greece. When these conflicts were over, he was firmly in control of Egypt and had strong claims to Palestine. He called himself King of Egypt from 306 BC. By the time he abdicated in 285 BC, in favor of one of his sons, the Ptolemaic dynasty was secure. Ptolemy and his descendants showed respect to Egypt's most cherished traditions, those of religion, and turned them to their own advantage. Alexandria became the center of the Greek and Hellenistic world and the center of international commerce, art and science. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, while during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus, The Library of Alexandria was the biggest library in the world until it was destroyed. The last pharaoh was a Greek princess, Cleopatra VII, who took her own life in 30 BC, a year after the Battle of Actium. With her defeat, the Roman Empire achieved a new completeness, encompassing the entire Mediterranean. Egypt remained under Roman control for the next 6 centuries. Greco-Roman and Byzantine Egypt. Under Greco-Roman rule, Egypt hosted several Greek settlements, mostly concentrated in Alexandria, but also in a few other cities, where Greek settlers lived alongside some 7 to 10 million native Egyptians. Fayum's earliest Greek inhabitants were soldier veterans and clerics who were settled by the Ptolemaic kings on reclaimed lands. Native Egyptians also came to settle in Fayum from all over the country, notably the Nile Delta, Upper Egypt, Oxyrhynchus and Memphis, to undertake the labor involved in the land reclamation process, as attested by personal names, local cults and recovered papyri. It is estimated that as much as 30% of the population of Fayum was Greek during the Ptolemaic period, with the rest being native Egyptians. By the Roman period, much of the Greek population of Fayum was made up of either Hellenized Egyptians or people of mixed Egyptian-Greek origins. By the time of Roman Emperor Caracalla in the 2nd century CE, the only way to differentiate Alexandria's Greeks from genuine ethnic Egyptians was by their speech, while commonly believed to represent Greek settlers in Egypt. According to Walker, the early Ptolemaic Greek colonists married local women and adopted Egyptian religious beliefs, and by Roman times, their descendants were viewed as Egyptians by the Roman rulers, despite their own self-perception of being Greek. The dental morphology of the Roman period Fayum mummies was also compared with that of earlier Egyptian populations, and was found to be much more closely akin to that of ancient Egyptians than to Greeks or other European populations. Victor J. Katz notes that research in papyri dating from the early centuries of the Common Era demonstrates that a significant amount of intermarriage took place between the Greek and Egyptian communities. Medieval Islamic and Ottoman era Greek culture and political influence continued and perhaps reached its most influential times during the Ottoman Caliphate, which witnessed many Ottoman sultans and pashas from Greek ancestry rule over the Ottoman Empire in general, and Egypt in particular. Some of the more notable Greeks during Ottoman times were Mimar Sinan, the world-renowned and historically respected architect, although it must be noted that he may have been of Armenian descent. Other notable Greeks in Egypt during the Ottoman period included Damit Hassan Pasha, who was the Grand Vizier to the Sultan, from Morea, Greece. Another interesting and influential Greek during this period is Misik Palaiologos Pasha, a member of the Byzantine Palaiologos dynasty and the Ottoman commander in the First Siege of Rhodes. He was an Ottoman statesman and Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire from 1499 to 1501. One of the most noteworthy Greeks of Egypt is Raghib Pasha, who served as Prime Minister of Egypt. Raghib Pasha was born in Greece to Greek parents. Although there is a long list of Greeks who were quite influential during the Ottoman Caliphate, Ibrahim Pasha perhaps is the most well-known, who served as the Grand Vizier to Sultan Suleiman from 1520 to 1566. Many Greek Muslims from Crete were resettled in Egypt, Libya, Lebanon, and Syria by Sultan Abdul Hamid II after the Greco-Turkish War of 1897 that resulted in Crete being ceded to the Kingdom of Greece. Modern times Greek communities. In 1907, the official census showed 6,924 Greeks living in Egypt. By 1940, Greeks were numbered at about 25,000. The Greek community in Alexandria lived around the church and monastery of Ias Savas. In the same area there was a guest house for Greek travelers, a Greek hospital and later a Greek school. The Orthodox bishop was based in Damietta in the church of Ias Nikolaos. In Cairo, the first organized Greek community was founded in 1856, with the community based in three main neighborhoods: Zoonia, Het El Room, and in Hamzouer. The Patriarchate was based in Het El Room, near the Church of St. Marcus. The Monastery of St. George, in Old Cairo, still survives. The monastery is surrounded by a huge wall and topped by a stone tower. Within its walls there is a Greek hospital, a school and housing for the elderly and poor. In addition to the Greek communities of Alexandria and Cairo, there were the organized Greek communities of El Mansoura, founded in 1860. The Portstead, founded in 1870, Tanta in 1880, and the community of Zagazig in 1870. There were 15 smaller communities across Egypt and mainly around Cairo and Alexandria. In Upper Egypt, the oldest ancient Greek community is the one of Minya, which was founded in 1862. The contribution of the Greek population in the financial life of Egypt was very important. The first banks in Egypt were created by Greeks, like the Bank of Alexandria, the Anglo-Egyptian Bank, and the General Bank of Alexandria. Also, it was the Greek agriculturists and farmers that first systematically and with scientific planning have cultivated cotton and tobacco. They improved the quantity and quality of the production and have dominated the cotton and tobacco commerce, doing large exports. Notable families that dominated the commerce of tobacco were the Salvagos, Benakers, Rodochenakis and Zervadachis. The tobacco breeds used for the cigarettes manufacturing was purely of Greek origin, such as Kyriazyphera. A thriving commerce between Greece and Egypt was thus established. Other areas of interest for the Greeks in Egypt were foods, wine, soap, woodcrafts, printing industries. In the food industry, the macaroni industries of Meletrinos, Antoniadis were well known. Another example was the cheese and butter production of Arcuriau, Rusaglo and Paleorutus. Chocolate, biscuits and toffee producers were Dalaolau, Rusis, Repapus, oil, soaps, vegetable fats producers like Zerbanus were based in Kafr al-Zayat. There were many Greek theatres and cinemas. Major Greek newspapers were Targramata, Tehydromus, and Nizoi. The Greek community in Egypt has produced numerous artists, writers, diplomats and politicians. The most famous of them was the poet Konstantinos Kavafis, also the painter Konstantinos Parthenis. During the Balkan Wars, the Greek communities of Egypt sent volunteers, funded hospitals, and accommodated families of the soldiers. During World War II, more than 7,000 Greeks fought for the Allies in the Middle East. 142 men died. Their financial contribution reached 2,500 million Egyptian pounds. After the Suez Crisis, the British and French labourers left while the Greeks stayed. Patriarchate of Alexandria, Greek-Egyptian benefactors. The emergence of a Greek aristocracy that consisted of rich industrialists, merchants and bankers has led to the great legacy of Greek-Egyptian philanthropism. These benefactors have donated large amounts for the building of schools, academies, hospitals and institutions in both Egypt and their motherland Greece. Mihail Tositsis has donated large amounts for the building of the Athens University, the Amalia Orphanage and the Athens Polytechnic. His wife Eleni Tositsa has donated the land for the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. George Avarov has also helped for the building of the National Technical University of Athens, the Evelpidon Military Academy and the donation of the Greek battleship Georgios Avarov to the Hellenic Navy. Emmanuel Benarchus has helped for the building of the National Gallery of Athens, while his son Antonis Benarchus was the founder of the Benarchi Museum. Other major benefactors include Nikolaos Stornaris, Theodoros Kotsakas, Nestoras Xanarklis, Konstantinos Hormis, Stephanos Delta, Penelope Delta, Pantases Vassinis and Vassilis Civitanidis. Exodus. The exodus of Greeks from Egypt started during and after the Revolution of 1952, with the establishment of the new sovereign regime of Gamal Abdel Nasser, rise of pan-Arab nationalism and the subsequent nationalization of many industries from 1957 and afterwards. Thousands of Greeks were forced to abandon the country. Many of them immigrated to Australia, the United States, Canada, South Africa, Western Europe, and Greece. Many Greek schools, churches, small communities and institutions subsequently closed. The Nasser regime was a major disaster for the Greek diaspora, which afterwards has dwindled from many thousands to a handful. The dangerous situation in the Middle East has also deteriorated the conditions for the Greeks that stayed back in Egypt. It is estimated that between 1957 to 1962 most of the Egyptian Greeks have left the country. Today the Greek community numbers officially about 1,000 people, with roughly 500 living in Alexandria, although the real number is much higher since many Greeks have changed their nationality to Egyptian. In Alexandria, apart from the Patriarchate, there is a patriarchal theology school that opened recently after 480 years being closed. St. Nicholas Church in Cairo and several other buildings in Alexandria have been recently renovated by the Greek government and the Alexander S. Onassis Foundation. St. George's Church in Old Cairo is undergoing restoration to end in 2014. During the last decade, there has been a new interest from the Egyptian government for a diplomatic rapprochement with Greece, and this has positively affected the Greek diaspora. The diaspora has received official visits of many Greek politicians. Economic relationships have been blossoming between Greece and Egypt. Egypt has been recently the center of major Greek investments in banking, tourism, paper, the oil industry, and many others. In 2009, a 5-year cooperation memorandum was signed among the NCSR Demokritos Institute in Agia Paraskevi, Athens and the University of Alexandria, regarding archaeometry research in contextual sectors. Notable Greeks from Egypt. Greeks of Cyrene are also included, as during antiquity it held close relations to the Egyptian kingdoms, and at some points also used to be a part of the Ptolemaic kingdom. The presence of an asterisk next to a person's name denotes that the person was born outside of Egypt. However, the most part of this person's life or most important work occurred while in Egypt.